right, thank you, Scott. Hey, everybody. Hey, Andy. What's going
Hey,
on?
Steve. Hi, Scott. Hi, hello, everybody.
Welcome to the Tuesday edition. We were not with you last Tuesday, so it's been a couple weeks. So it feels like it's been a couple weeks. So let's get right into it. Just the front end slide reminder that myself and Andy, we're not registered professionals. So anything you see or hear is just our personal opinion. It's not to be taken as financial advice. Nor is it the financial advice of Trade Ideas. All right, so we've got a test drive coming up, and best thing we ever did for test drive was extend it to 2 weeks because our test drive used to be 5 days, and 5 days really doesn't cut it for any new user that's trying to kick the tires and understand how to use the program. So 2 weeks is really kind of the sweet spot before you start to bring it all together and tie it all together and bring it in the way you want to see it, whether you're a scalper or a swing trader or whatnot. So the ways in which we try and help you guys get up to speed as quickly as possible, and this will be the place you want to be during the test drive if you're going to be experiencing that, is Barry's live trading room. It's free, it's open every day from bell to bell pretty much, and there's a lot of demonstration going on in there about the Trade Ideas product as well as some good trading education and some ideas. There's a couple of really good traders in there as well as Barry. We have the afternoon webinars as we're doing right now, which is usually kind of a controlled content. We come up with the content ahead of time. We do have some Q&A, but for the most part, the best place to get your Q&A is these daily support sessions. We give Barry a break every day at noon Eastern and fill in for him on the live stream, take over and share our desktop. I did my session today. Andy does his on Fridays, always a different flavor. But again, just a great place to pull up a chair and learn. If you've been itching to learn something, we're there every 24 hours for you to come up and just ask the question and let us demonstrate how to help you, because the telephone really doesn't work that well for this kind of stuff. And just a reminder, that is the link below. If you do trade-ideas.com/live, it'll redirect you to that YouTube live stream. And like I said, you'll see Barry's room and either one of us during the 1 hour period from 12 to 1 Eastern. All right, so this week, as always, we start off with just the reminder that no matter what we're doing these days in this brave new world, no matter what the industry is, we're using technology, whether it's algorithms or AI or just straight up better tech. And it's a reminder that it's a symbiotic relationship. We can't just rely on tech to do everything for us. Technology helps curate the ideas and serve the ideas to us. The human brain still is much stronger than an AI or an algorithm with the nuances that we can process. And so it's a great relationship, and Trade Ideas certainly fits that bill in the trading and finance world. It's a perfect platform to serve up what you're looking for and help you make the best decisions. And that's what Andy and I try and do here every Tuesday, is give you both sides of the coin, the human side and making good decisions, and also how to achieve that data using the Trade Ideas platform. All right, so Andy will talk about the AI coming up shortly. I will start off by talking about the market recap. Not much has really changed from yesterday when Jamie and I spoke. I'll start with the S&P as always. There's two ways to correct. You can correct in price, or you can correct over time and just kind of go sideways, which really is what we've kind of been doing here the last week. Extremely bullish. We do have a Fed meeting tomorrow, and I'm sure Jerome Powell will give us even more reasons as to why we can't park our money anywhere else than the stock market to chase yield and try and get some return on our money with interest rates and negative interest rates out there. There's really no other place to put your money. So with that fundamental thesis and that backdrop, the technicals really only confirm that. Going back, we had three pretty solid tests of the 50-day moving average. We're well above that now, but really with that sideways consolidation we've had in the last week, it gives the opportunity for these moving averages to kind of play catch up, and we'll see where we go from here. So if we're not going to pull back in price, I guess we're just going to slide sideways in time. We'll see what happens. But again, no bear case to be made here. We're in all-time record territory, clean air above all the moving averages. And then the NASDAQ, which was kind of playing slowpoke for a while, messing around for a while below its 50, has recovered and also done the same thing for the most part, sideways action. But what I really see over here in the NASDAQ is that proverbial cup and handle that we all hear and read about, which is really nothing more than just nice basing patterns, pulling back and building a higher base camp and waiting for a catalyst or a reason for everybody to understand why we should be moving higher. Again, keep in mind, we've got the Fed coming out tomorrow. We'll see what they have to say about the quote unquote inflation that they say doesn't really exist, or they say it's transitory. I don't think we believe that. I think we all agree that inflation's here and it's continuing to push. So they're playing a game of chicken. That's a whole other story. We'll see what happens, but I'm just here to talk about the footprints in the sand. And that brings me to the IWM that I was talking literally about the proverbial head and shoulders last week, and it's making me look silly with these last 5 days here. IWM grabbed the reins and took the small caps higher. It's the Russell 2000, if you're not familiar with that one. So after just a wash of mess here in the moving averages, getting all twisted and tied up, price actions popping back above, and again, just following the rest of the indexes. But part of me thought last week that could have been the beginning of something there when the small caps start to roll over. But there was absolutely no follow through, complete reversal of fortune over there. Tesla had some earnings last night, and Apple's got some earnings tomorrow. Tesla didn't give back too much today, so I think a lot of that might have been priced in. We have Apple tomorrow, and it looks very much like the NASDAQ. It's just kind of the crowd giving us a nice cup and handle here, literally just waiting for the catalyst of what are the numbers. And again, are the numbers going to be baked into the current price, or are they going to be so far above the expectations that they actually drag the price higher? Or option number 3, are they going to disappoint? We shall see, but it looks like the way the price is setting up going into that, it's expecting some good prices, or some good earnings numbers, I should say. And other than that, there's really not much else to look at in the macro scheme of things. With the Fed tomorrow, I did notice the TLT and the IEF both really just rounded top there, right at the 50-day moving average. This is your mortgage 10-year treasury. I think this is going to be interesting to watch tomorrow. As I said, the Fed and the interest rate discussion, but technically speaking, just an absolute slam right into the wall there of that 50-day. And that's why we're going to talk about the 50-day a lot today. And so there's just yet another example of how that moving average is an area of interest, only because everybody looks at it. And if everybody looks at it, then it's an area of interest. And that's where decisions are made to press, change, or rearrange stocks and portfolios. So before I give it back to you, Andy, anything you want to add on the general backdrop of the market, other than it's just another day, a week of my stocks are bleeding red as the market moves higher?
Exactly. No, Steve. I mean, there's what else is there to talk about, really? It's just a beautiful kind of bullish pattern setting up, and no bear case. So there's really not a whole lot to add on. I think,
Just got to be in the right stuff.
Yep, that's true. You do.
Just got
You
to
have
be in the right
the
stuff.
rotation can be
Tricky.
can be a killer too if you're not in the right stuff. That's for sure.
Well, that was the theme of the trade of the week, and we'll delve into some of that stuff after you're done looking at the AI here.
All right. All righty. Let me grab it. And not a bad day for the AI. I like the fact that it only had 5 calls today. And as we look at the spiders here, you can see that it, sorry, I'm not going to pull up my cursor today. There's not a whole lot to talk about, but just not a whole lot going on in the SPYs. You can see they're basically 2 dojis in a row. Makes it a little bit tough to get any follow through and some of the AI calls, but there was a couple of really good trades. First and foremost was this VXRT. Which, no, I'm sorry, it's this ALDX I'll talk about next. But let me go ahead and talk about this. This was kind of late in the ball game, all right? Meaning that that had a big move. You're looking at a pretty big green candle when the alert was called. And if I had to guess, it's probably because there was probably some sort of setting for a multi-month high. You can see it going back over here. Called it real close to this wick going back here in February. So I imagine that was maybe a filter in there. Otherwise, yeah, I'm surprised this didn't call earlier. But if I had to guess, that's what it was all about. The kind of range there in the 3-month range or whatever it might be. Let's zoom out a little bit, And yeah, you can see there was definitely some congestion over there, if you will, and just for some reason, whatever they called it late in the ball game. But even still, you did have about 45 minutes of upward movement, plenty of time to make a little money. This was a really short target. I'm not sure. Maybe because of that late entry, the reason the target was so quick, uh, and it was pretty tight on the stop as well. So target was hit, even though it was only a 50-cent gain. There was more on the bone if you kept it for maybe another 30 minutes. So not a bad trade there. And I really liked this ALDX because you had a stock that kind of gapped up. Okay, a lot of things happening here on the daily, gapped up to like a 3-month high, did have some congestion over here, and that's kind of where the target was that it did reach. No, I'm sorry, it exited before the target on this one. I'm not sure why, but I want to stress, we all do it all the time in here, man and machine. Okay, if the machine pointed out this trade to you and it looked like a pretty good setup, there was your buy signal right there. Really no pain, only went a few cents lower than the buy signal, and then just kind of trended up. Finally had a range break, at this level right about there, and then just went sideways. And look what happened here, guys. You hear us talk about this 10 period um, moving average on a 15-minute chart. And look how it did not close below that. It tried to dive down, popped up, closed above it, really held it all the way to here before it broke that 10 period moving average. So a lot of meat on this bone had you held it. Now Holly was quick on the trigger for some reason for a quick profit there, but you can see the difference between the moderate profit of with using my share allocation of $519 versus basically $200 on the conservative profit. So very some good opportunity there in those two. Not a whole lot to talk about here, Steve. These other ones were just kind of wishy-washy, really didn't do a whole lot. This IP now just kind of never stopped out, but just never pretty much ended up flat
I
on
like
my.
that ALDX as a great example of, again, human and machine. Okay, AI
Mhm.
serves up great ideas in real time, but
Yep.
the stop level in red is an arbitrary number based off of back testing, and it's spit out in that moment. And as the day moves on, we get more information. And so I try to tell people, if you're using that 15-minute chart and that 10-period moving average, that becomes your exit. That first candle that closed below, you'll see it never really recovered, and that was really the space to get out. So my recommendation, if you're using AI for ideas, is let the idea generate, and then use that. And in most cases, I'll say, including this one here, that 10-period moving average comes up to meet the price very quickly and tightens your stop for you. It doesn't give the original wide stop that the AI recommends. And so just a great example there. As you can see, the price bounces off that. And if you use that as your risk management stop, it's a much better performance in the long run, I guarantee you.
Yeah, and yes, and one other thing here too. Look at the relative volume on this, guys. 159 relative volume, which is just asinine. And look at this volume bar. You can just look at the volume bar itself. So the volume was huge. And typically, guys, when you see those gap and craps or those gaps in those first quick moves, and or maybe even the first hour, and then they just kind of bleed off the rest of the day. You usually don't get that when you get this kind of relative volume. And usually these things will just keep kind of grinding with that kind of volume behind it. It tells you something's big is going on here, whatever it is. And not all cases, but usually after the first couple hours, if you have something that's hanging on and still doing huge volume, it's typically going to follow, the same pattern. So that's about it, Steve. I'm going to shoot it back to you.
All right, shoot it easy.
All right.
All right. So as mentioned, was off last week, or there was no trade of the week webinar last week for other reasons. And the week prior to that was TGB. So I kind of want to revisit the trade of the week from 2 weeks ago. If we recall, let me go back in the time machine here. And that is what it looked like going into the weekend. And so I'll just mark that area up. That was our entry for the most part. And then we got into Monday, it tickle triggered and then collapsed. Well, by the time we got to our webinar, it was on this day right here. I said, well, this stock, like many stocks, gives us a tell as to what it is the stock respects. And in this case, the stock has been respecting the 50-day moving average. And so I said in actual trade instructions of the trade of the week that the stop would be to not let, again, just like we mentioned, the price close below that key moving average. A close below that key moving average would have stopped us out of this trade, but it didn't. It bounced back in. All right, so let's clean that up and let's take that off because that was the original entry. We'll just leave that on there, it doesn't matter. And then traded through towards the end of the week, came back, and then gave a little bit of really nice compression here, but again, never even got to the 50-day moving average. And so the threat of a stop out wasn't even really that close if you were going on that. And then we got a beautiful push yesterday on great volume, I might add, and a follow-through day on great volume. Gave a lot more back today than I would have wanted, but you know, this is what happens when you break out of key prior resistance levels. It's kind of short-lived and the price drops back into the range. So all is well on that front if you're still holding this one. I'll get that line off there now. What I would expect is maybe a bit more of a choppiness. Maybe this one, along with many stocks, has a tendency to really reach down on the opening 10, 15 minutes and then revert. I'm kind of expecting that to happen over the next day or two at some point and to try and pick up that moving average that you can see that I talk a lot about. It's starting to come up to meet the price. So if this price touches that moving average again, I would expect the price to dig in and maybe another leg even higher. But all is well on that one from 2 weeks ago. I even mentioned that this one, might take a little while for it to materialize. We have to have patience as a swing trader, and sometimes that's hard even for the best of us. The following week, which was last week, I was out of town, not participating at all. And, as luck would have it, it was a no trade. It didn't trigger. There wasn't much really that I saw going into this weekend other than the networking stocks looked like they were all kind of consolidating and maybe ready to push higher. But I'll tell you what a difference. And thank God it didn't trigger, really. It got close, but it didn't trigger. It was this day right here that would have been, I believe, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, this was the first day, and it never even got close to our trigger price. I'm going to turn that price alert actually off. I don't think, because I don't want to know about it now, because look at what 5 days has done. It's completely changed the context. The moment this was called, it just retreated and spent the last 4 days under our key moving averages here. So now, rather than being supportive in the price as it was here, and tried to be there, it's now under pressure. The moving averages are putting a lid, so to speak, on the price. And so I'm okay with that thing never even triggering last week. Sometimes the jump rope gives us a lot of things to look at, and sometimes it gives us kind of slim pickings going into a weekend. But that was last week, which brings us to this week. And as I mentioned before, trying to get away from some of those trending stocks that are moving sideways. As Andy mentioned earlier, the rotation continues, and trying to find some more ideas that have been basing and showing signs of a possible move. And last week, we really saw the guys here, saw a lot of moves in stocks like NIO. Nice strong moves off of these rounding bottom basing patterns. There's a couple others I'm certainly probably not mentioning here, but sometimes that's where the baton looks to go. And my first question, here we go, we're going to talk about, my first question is what's going to happen when it gets to the 50-day moving average? Again, that's kind of the barometer of health for me. When I look at a stock, it's my first impression. Is it above the moving average of 50 or is it below? Is the 50 average declining? Is it flat? So these stocks, the EV stocks, they had a pretty good drubbing over the last 3 months, and a lot of them are bouncing up into their 50-day moving average. Now, I'm going to bring up, before I bring that up, the genesis, the concept behind this one. It did not come off of a scan that I had last week. Now, I've got a scan that we're going to point to today. It does happen to show up on there. But this is kind of more of I backed into this one. Long story, but met a bunch of amazing soccer players my age, over 45 and 50, at the park across the street. And I go over there on Sunday and hang out with some of them. We talk stocks. And one guy said, hey, this LiDAR technology, have you heard of VLDR? No, scratch that. He gave me another one, LAZR, and a few other names. And I took those names and I popped them, into the trade ideas similar tab. And I think I found a couple of new names, and VLDR was something that I liked. It was kind of basing back here, and I never really lost sight of it. And as you can see, I've got this one on my like list. If you press the heart button on your chart, it's going to show up on your stocks I like list. So it's on wherever it is. It's been on this list for a while. I've got about 20 or 30 names on here that I just kind of keep an eye on. And so as the EV names and some of this other names started to all look the same, started to kind of take the same shape. Well, going into the weekend, I thought this was the best looking one that I could find in terms of stocks that are basing. But yeah, there's a slight issue there. It's under the 50-day moving average. And so what I wanted to really call out is the declining 50-day moving average in blue is one of the last hurdles for VLDR to clear. So here's what our first target, or our first goal was. If VLDR can post a few closing days above this declining 50 SMA this week, then the chances for a move higher down the road, will increase tremendously. And so that is literally what we've got. Now, I'm gonna say I don't like the way in which VLDR is doing this. If you can see these wicks, the sellers still kind of feel like they're in control. Both days, yesterday and today, stock got ahead of itself and the sellers kind of threw it back down into the range. But the good news for us is I think this is where the fight is occurring right now for us. There's nothing that says that since it is below its 50-day moving average, it doesn't mean that it can't work its way through and start to change its tune. Eventually, they all do that back and forth. And so the good news is yesterday was day number 1, and today is technically day number 2, where we have a close above this 50-day moving average. These moving averages are going to come up to start support the price, and this is kind of a process is what we are going through here. And trust me, guys, it is really hard to get some of the moves that we were getting back last October, November, December, and those names that were trending, moving sideways and just blasting higher on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday. We're having to work a little bit harder for it now. And this is one of those cases where we're just, the Cisco trade didn't trigger last week. And if they do trigger, then, they fall back into the range. So we're trying to find some good risk reward setups here. And I can't think of a better way than to start looking for something that's really basing like that. And so here we are at the 50-day moving average. All right, Dave. Yeah, Dave, thank you for reminding me that I was literally going to get to that. And I talked to Andy today, and Andy, we're both kind of saying, boy, I sure hope VLDR, holds that 5-day moving average that we always look at. And you're right, Dave, like clockwork, it did it. And this is why I believe in these things, because they just give me day after day reason to believe the correlations are real and they should be given attention. Does it mean we have to do something every time they touch them? No, but it becomes a level of interest to watch and help us make our continued decision-making process. So Andy and I were saying, boy, sure, I'm getting tired of saying these words. Well, I hope this thing can close above its 50. I hope this thing can close above its 5-day moving average. But it's doing it begrudgingly. And so we're in the midst of kind of a fight here. Again, remember, the sellers think they have control, and they're like, no, guys, not so fast. Let's look at these 2 opening days. There was that first range, and then right there yesterday, the sellers took control. This one was just absolutely disgusting. If you can see it, you blinked, you had a nice green candle up here above 16, you turn your back and fill your coffee, and it's gone this morning. I don't care for that kind of action. I don't like it. But again, we base our decisions on how did the close, who won in the end. By the end of the day, did the sellers, the bears get a couple more black eyes a little bit today? Or are they having to think twice about maybe trying to stay short this thing? Because the more days it closes above the 50-day moving average, the better. So that's where we are on this one. As I said a couple weeks ago, we're looking for stocks that are trying to change lanes and move higher. I'm also in RIDE. Got out of that one because I'll tell you exactly what happened. I was liking it back here. But as I say, the minute it closes below its key moving average on this day, I got out, watched all that stuff, and then took a chance back here at 980. So trying to be tricky down here with some of these bottoming basing plays, because that's what really we have to do, is we have to look for what's going to work right now, because I've been banging my head into some of these other plays and they just haven't been working on the trending side. So we're looking for the rotational stuff. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. Even I ran into horrible situations. I'm going to say it because we talked about this, not that. We talked about also RANs. Also watch ASO FSM and YQ. Okay, well, let's start with FSM. I was in this name because it's a silver stock and it was consolidating nicely. Looked just nice as it could be right there. Hey, no problem. And then they decided to go out and acquire something and it really pissed off their shareholders and I never got out. And so I'm literally just kind of waiting. I'm literally waiting for this thing to just give me a relief bounce up into the moving averages that are going to be meeting it. My goal is to just minimize the damage here. It's not the first time, it won't be the last time, but when it happens, you know, my fear is that I'm going to be the one who sells and then it bounces without me. I just want some sort of a relief bounce that I can get out of this thing as unscathed as possible, if that even makes sense because of that. The other one was ASO. We're also in this one, we're looking for a giant short squeeze. Look at the 48% short float. This was almost a trade of the week, guys, but as I just said, I'm losing patience on these kind of trades that don't blast higher for us. So it's an also ran. It's something to keep an eye on. I'm in a small, moderate size on this one, hoping that this backstop of the 20-day moving average will pick up the price. And just all it takes is one or two big short sellers to get scared to death. And this thing could squeeze above and start to spook the short sellers. And before you know it, we have a nice move. So don't lose track of ASO. I've got a blue line there. I'm also in the trade, but I want to know when it takes out those two wicks. And then I think Andy, was it YQ? What was the one that you liked? I haven't even looked at that one. YQ.
Yeah, it
I threw you
doesn't. I
under the bus
mean,
on that one.
it's
Another
well,
one that's
no,
turning.
no, no. I mean, it's you kind of got to let it break out of that range there. I would almost go back to, like, yes, last month's high.
Right
Yeah, I
there.
mean, yeah, maybe a little. I think you're going back to the previous month, but
Okay.
maybe, yeah, there you
Yeah.
go, right around there.
Okay.
Yeah,
But
maybe
again,
just
this
a
is
little
like
bit
we were
higher.
saying a couple weeks ago. The stock is changing lanes. It's basing. It's running out of sellers, and it's starting to push through its key moving averages. And then eventually this thing will have a date with that 50-day moving average. VLDO live, it's okay. So Carrie asks, it's live at 1463. Is that after it closes a couple days above the SMA? So no, it's live. It traded above. When I talk about the closing price, Carrie, I'm more concerned about the stop loss. And so let's finish off with that VLDR. The risk on this one is to not allow the price, because we're live, it triggered right about there. But the risk is to not let it close below this moving average. That's going to start to close and bring up the rear. The 10 period ideally will hold all attempts, but the 20 period in red is going to kind of be the backstop. So we don't want to see a close below that. If it does, then all bets are off here. I mean, so far it's kind of ticked off all the little marks that we want to see along the way. And the current tick that we're looking for is a few more days of closing above this 50-day moving average. And I think the sellers are going to run out of steam down here, and we could have an easy shot up to 20, which is the target. All right, yes, David, go find out where the shorts are in ASO and pop a bag, blow up a bag behind them and pop them and scare them and make them run to the fire exits. All right, so how can we find stocks? How can we use trade ideas to try and find things like we've been looking at, RIDE and YQ and VLDR and things that are building a strong base? Well, I already started it and I gave it a cute name already. Call it Play the Bass because I'm a bass player and we're trying to play the bass. And Andy's giggling on that one.
Yeah.
All right, so in all fairness, I kind of started with the template of Andy's Let's Go Fishing, but did a few modifications, took out a few ideas, mainly like the revenue growth, added a bigger position in the 10-day range. And so let's go through this. First one, position in the 3-month range means if we look at a 3-month range, we can't be higher than 1/3 off of the low. So if we count back here 3 months, here's our 3-month range. And the 1/3, the 30% area, looks, I'm just going to eyeball it. I'd say that's like the 30% area. So when we say position and range, max of 30, that means we don't want to see anything up in here. We only want to see these guys down here that are in the beaten up section of their 3-month range. All right, moving forward, we have another range, position in the 10-day range. Okay, so let's see how that one would look visually. 10-day range, I'm gonna eyeball is basically here to here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. and we want to be in the 70th percentile. Well, I'm going to eyeball it roughly. Maybe we drop down. I'll tell you what, because we might have done that. VLDR was in this scan earlier in the day, and it may have dropped down. Let's take a look here. Let's take a look at my,
That's what happened.
yeah, that's exactly what happened. 10-day range. Look, there it is, right? 20, it's at the 22%. Oh, no, I'm sorry, that's not position in 10-day range.
No, that's the
That's the
range.
size of the range. Yeah, let's just quickly look at position in 10-day range here and see what the actual value is so I can see. And the value would be 66. See, we missed it by 4. So if I lower that to a 65%, VLDR will pop back in. But that's the point. If we count back 10 days, 0 is our low, 100's our high. We want to see things in the upper 1/3 band.
It was
All
that
right,
stupid
so
morning drive that
yeah,
made it. Yeah.
it was that morning drive that made it drop off here.
Mhm.
So we're narrowing down. We looked at our first 3-month position. We got to be in the lower 1/3 of the 3-month. We looked at our 10-day. We want to be in the high range of that 10-day. Let's see what else is in here. We've got, I believe, so the moving averages. So I took out, the fundamental stuff of earnings percent growth and things like that, earning per share growth, and I just said, look, I want to see things that are basing on the 10 and 3-month filters that we just kind of looked at. But I want to qualify that and say they both need to be above my key moving averages. They need to be above the 10 and they need to be above the 20 by at least 1/100%, and that's really it. That's really, for the most part, all that came into this particular scan, and it starts to give us ideas of things that we're, kind of basing. Now, the way it's sorted right here, it's sorted by change from the close. So all these things at the top, they've had a pretty good run today. As you get down here towards the unchanged stuff, middle of the road stuff, oh, that's an interesting one. Herbalife back above its averages. But another thing you could do is I added the column short float percent. Maybe we can double click this scan and we can come in and say, well, what are the things that looked good? It looks like I froze up here. Let me just get there we go. So now if we've sorted on that, we've got ARO. Well, isn't this interesting to know? ARRY has got 59% short. So if they're running out of room down here on the short side, might be good to know. Well, you could set an alert wherever you want, but the point is the power of trade ideas is the 1-2 punch, finding the ideas on the top list and then setting up a price alert, just kind of eyeballing something like that. The shorts could start to get spooked, but again, we've got that 50-day moving average coming in. Similar on this one, IPO. Okay, that one actually had its short squeeze today. 26% short the float, kind of threw the towel in today. It was building a base above its moving averages there and then took off. So there's no one right way to use this scan. And again, Andy and I are kind of personally, we're in the drawing board section. What was working really well a few months ago hasn't been working. And so we're constantly trying to find ideas that might bring us ideas forward that we might not have thought about. And double clicking and sorting by short the float might be one to certainly do. You could double click and look at the relative volumes and look at those ones that are strong today. So there's many different ways in which you can approach looking at this. Anything else you'd think about maybe wanting to add to something like this, looking for bottomings? I mean,
Well, yeah, you could do a number of things. Me personally, I do like the revenue growth, but it's not necessary. If I see a nice looking chart, it's a nice looking chart.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
did have a
Jeff,
question. I wasn't sure if you still do this on your trade of the week. Do you offer suggestions for targets anymore? I didn't know if we still did that or
yes
just
and no. I have and I
okay.
haven't. This week I did. This week the
Okay.
actual target was 20.
Okay.
Yeah,
There you go, Carrie. But like I was explaining to her, Steve, that exits are subjective. Some people may want to scalp it. Some of them probably got
might have
out
taken
today on that
today.
drive. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Other people, they may want to hold it for weeks or months. Especially on some of these ones that are possibly coming up off a bottom. Those things can be great huge percentage winners. You're
Again,
right.
one of the reasons Andy and I are looking for these types of setups, and one of the reasons I'm in a stock like Ride, and one of the reasons we call it a stock like VLDR, is there's just less pain if you're wrong, as opposed to some of these ones that were high flying trenders. When they break those trends, they fall pretty hard. And so, we've been through this before. The market runs in cycles. Trust me, there'll be a time when we're looking to fade and go short stocks that have bounced up 3 days, because that's what works. That's not what's working right now. We're in a very neutral, kind of a wishy-washy back and forth situation right now. So probably a lot to be said for taking your profits quicker rather than later, because it really is a market that can just drive you and frustrate you if you're not patient. Especially like that TGB. It took a good 2 weeks before that thing really got going. And yes, you are correct, Jeff. I started with the revenue growth fishing, but what I added was a couple of different changes in the ranges, and made sure that all stocks were above the 10 or the 20, whereas Andy just wanted to see stocks that actually had some positive revenue quarter over quarter growth.
Speaking of which, guys, I've been thinking this week, and I'm actually going to do my webinar on bottom fishing. I know most of the books and the gurus out there just tell you buy strong stocks, but I've done really well, and I'm going to talk about things that you can do to really do well when you're looking at bottom fishing charts like that.
Mm-hmm. All right. Yeah, we'll take a look at chart requests here in a couple seconds. I'm going to quickly, you can send in chart requests now if you'd like. I see Jeff already has. I'll go through the sectors here real quickly. I'm not going to mark up any charts for you because I don't feel really comfortable with what's working. I'm still kind of, looking myself. It's been a very, treading water for the last 4 or 6 weeks in my swing account. Let's just be honest. All right. Steel, looks like that one was the big one moving today. And if you want my opinion, the move happened. It's probably ready for some sort of consolidation. Oils, boy, when you talk about the 50-day moving average showing up, oil certainly is doing today. I think I closed my pen for no good reason. I did. Really giving you a solid reason to trust the 50-day moving average there in the oil ETF. That is for sure. What else we got in here? Retail. I just been kind of creeping higher. The XRT, I almost think it looks too much like GameStop, quite honestly. So I haven't been paying much attention to that one. XHB, I don't know what's going to pull this thing back to reality. I think we've all heard the horror stories of people bidding $50,000, $80,000 over asking and not getting it. Lumber prices are through the roof. Material building prices, there's no inflation there. Pay no attention to that. Well, it's interesting. Energy all of a sudden kind of got pinned under all these key moving averages. It was looking good last month, but yeah, it's got a little bit of a fight going on there. Interest rates, we might know a bit more tomorrow about interest rates, and that could affect the bank stocks like that one there, and the XLF, looking for a reason to kind of move higher out of some highs, and there's the bank stock again. For whatever reason, this KWEB, which is what, Andy? It's the, what do they call it? Trust Shares China Internet. Well, for whatever reason, it looks like a lot of those other stocks we've been seeing basing here at the 200-day, trying to find reasons to push higher. The float is updated about twice a month, Alessandro, and that's really the best the industry can do as a whole, because the short float is it's supposed to be a survey from brokers. Now, I know there are a lot of sites out there that try to quantify based on certain metrics what they think the short float will be, but the average official short float metrics are updated only twice a month. Kind of like, non-farm payroll surveys, the same kind of a thing, really. Brokers, speaking of brokers, yeah, the IAF is an ETF. That's interesting. Now, I'm just going to say it. I've been a fundamental silver bull, but I haven't had a lot of technical reason to back me up, but I do now. All right. This has just been an absolute mess back here. But all of a sudden, silver has posted a few closes below the key 50-day moving average. And look at this. This is the kind of stuff we're looking for in the stocks that we've been looking at today. The 50 kind of is the general health, and then the fast line of the 10 period moves up to maybe force the issue. Again, tomorrow we've got the Fed. Maybe the Fed's got something to say about silver and gold. I think I'll just go ahead and get a head start on gold. Same situation, gold sliding sideways. These moving averages might have something to do maybe with what comes out of the Fed tomorrow. IWM, we talked about that earlier. Again, every week I'll say the same damn thing. For the life of me, I don't know how this ETF is moving. Office buildings have not been full. Retail strip malls have been decimated, but hey, whatever. The REIT ETF moves higher. iDrive. Okay, so this is something that Andy and I came across, and there's two different ETFs. Supposedly, this iDrive is supposed to have VLDR and some of these other autonomous vehicles, but when we looked under the hood, it's just Intel and AMD and all the other big names. The other one Andy found was called CARS, and I'll bring this up quickly. If you ever really want to look for, a good way to find out what is holding up an ETF, go to MarketWatch and you plug it in there, and CARS basically tells us these are the top holdings. So a lot more of these semi-chip names and autonomous vehicle names, Plug Power, F-Cell, alt names, EVs, things like that. So I've added that to my list, CARS, and that one is looking very similar to what we have today. VLDR, posting 2 days above the critical 50-day moving average. Let's see if it can build on that. Not really much else to look at. We talked about that one. Boy, the airlines were looking good a few days ago, a couple weeks ago. Now they've just died and fell back below the 50-day. And now they're just in the washing machine there again. OIHs kind of getting caught in the wash again. Healthcare stocks looking good, breaking out and consolidating. Biotech stocks trying to post a couple strong days above that 50. And again, tomorrow, keep an eye on the Treasury, TLT, and the IEF. If the interest rates are going to do something, those could have something to say about it. And there's our gold miners, gave some back today. All right, nothing really stood out to me in that list that we just went through. So I actually did share it. Ballinger, the scan that I called Play the Base is available there. It's in the GoToWebinar chat window, and the cloud link is there, and it's something for you to just play around with. It's just kind of a starting point. XLY before we look at your charts, or maybe that's the one you want me to look at, Dave. We can start with yours. Doesn't look bad, but again, these are the setups that have been disappointing me lately with their lack of follow through. So we'll see what happens.
And you had a couple above there too. The people started dropping them in when you were doing your.
We're going to start with Vuzi because Joe was the first one on Vuzi. All right, let's bring this back out, open. You can see it bounced nicely off that 50-day, so we've been talking a lot about that. It's just kind of in no man's land here. It could continue. It's almost a megaphone pattern. It's got a lot of room to run if it still wants to get to these high end of that channel there. HUYA off the bottom. Yeah, it's got a nice rounding bottom. It's trying to change lanes, to coin the term I said 3 weeks ago, posting some closes behind its declining moving averages, flattening those out. What is this, computer programming? Doesn't look bad, but it's got a lot of work to do ahead of it, of course. Dave, another one, DOCU, D-O-C-U. I just froze up again. We'll get there in a second. All right, DOCU. Well, not bad, above its moving averages. Probably just set a price alert and see what it does above those recent highs. I think you also have MTW in there. This one's probably ready to consolidate. A couple days or two, wait for the moving averages to catch up would be my thoughts on that one. Take two, thoughts on a short put spread. Okay, so you're on the right, you said the right word, short, because this thing is not looking that great. To be honest, if you were long, it's just got a lid on it by its, what do you know, 50-day moving average, and it's losing these other key moving averages as we speak. If you're short that name, let me just say, that's probably where a lot of money is being made right now in the individual names. We keep trying to go long a market that says go long, but a lot of our longs are bleeding. And if you're finding some good short setups out there and they're working, by all means, take them and make it work for you. Playboy, I've seen this one talked a lot about recently. Really nice trend, but I'd rather have seen Playboy like right there, on that day right there. I can't, there we go. That's the beautiful setup for me that I like, because once they get extended, you're just asking to be the last person to have the music stop and you look for a chair back here at the moving average. but it doesn't look bad. We're doing JP Morgan. JP Morgan, surprisingly, not looking as strong as other financials. It's really got a lot of headwinds right here in the immediate vicinity. See what tomorrow brings for that one. We did XLY on that one for Dave. And Cesar, I'm using a 15-minute chart and a daily chart. All right, we'll do 3 more here, and then we'll bring Scott in. LVS, SKT, and ERJ. LVS Las Vegas also was looking really interesting back here, but it gave up its 50-day and it's struggling to get back above. It's got a lot of headwinds. Looks like a lot of charts. SKT. Now this one's what we would call moving day. All right, very nice day, good volume, big long green candle. It closed on highs. If you were long in the stock, chances are you want to stay long into tomorrow, because that's what I do when I see these. I always hope and pray that you get that gap up the next day, as everybody wants to chase it in pre-market. So if you're long this going into tomorrow, I would expect and hope some sort of a gap. You might get one. All right, and then lastly, ERJ. Well, you guys snuck a couple more in there. ERJ is very nice trend. Nothing really bad to say about that one. You do have my curiosity at Amazon, because it's going to look very much like, you know, the tech stocks. But Amazon has been in a very long range, almost a 1-year range. Look at that.
Yeah.
Very interesting. That's why I wanted to bring that one up before I brought Scott in. I know this one's got a very unique chart. Now I'm admittedly addicted to Prime over the last year. It's been very convenient for me, but I know a lot of people have been using it. But interestingly enough, the stock chart's not reflecting the popularity of it. All right. Last one, then we'll bring Scott in. Skills. I've seen this one. Very nice pop off of lows. Look for some sideways consolidation, and then that dominating 50-day moving average, Elena, is going to be your next big hurdle, maybe in the next week. All right, I'm all talked out, and that's all I got. So we'll bring Scott in for any last announcements, and thank you guys for your questions.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Thanks, Andy. A couple items on the way out. Let's make sure everyone's aware that we have an ebook with favorite strategy indicators of Dave Mabe, our director of software development. So go ahead and grab that. Just go to tradeIdeas.com/strategy. He's the guy that created the odds maker and Holly the AI. So go ahead and check that out. We've also got a podcast. We put up a new episode 2 weeks ago, so go ahead and check that out. Subscribe to Trade Ideas Podcasts by searching for Trade Ideas Podcast wherever you listen to your pods. And go ahead and add us as a subscription and catch the next one. As a code, Maydays, all caps, saves 15% off your first month or year of Trade Ideas. So do check that out if you're doing a new subscription or an upgrade. Saves you some money. And you can follow Steve on Twitter at TISteveG. And we've also got at Trade Ideas, on Pod, some other handles. Find those. Facebook.com/Trade Ideas Pro is the Facebook page to like, share everything with your friends. And any questions, email us info@TradeIdeas.com. Goes to our help desk, gets you the help you need best way possible. So the recording of this will be available later on tonight or tomorrow. Stay tuned for that. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, see you next time.
Thanks, everybody. I'll see you Thursday.